Another minute and a half here for people to make that transition. Quite a few RSVPs. Looks like we're still missing a handful. It can get started with introduction here. I probably have met most of you, but if not, I'm Alex. I'm the ATAC coordinator with the program. I'm the primary point of contact and support for ATACs on everything program related, whether that's process or projects, feedback, whatever it might be. You're welcome to reach out to me and I can get you connected with whomever you need to get connected with. And I'm here to support the ATAC process. Um, so thank you all for coming this morning to our fall ATAC webinar. We host two large events like this every year. We have one that's in person, typically in the right around late spring or so. And then we have a second one in the fall here leading into the end of the year to cover updates that have happened throughout the year. So thank you for coming. Gonna have a few other people presenting with us today. Ron, our custom lead, will be talking a little bit later, and then Jeff, our engineering manager, is gonna be speaking as well. And then Nate Collins is also in here, who does a lot of support with the ATAC program. And we've got a pretty good group here. It's being recorded, so if those that come in late are welcome to catch up on whatever they miss afterwards. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is our agenda for today. I sent this out in the invite. We've made a pretty significant update to the program guide, which I sent out an email last week pointing to the new guide on the website and where that can be found and read through all the changes. We're going to talk about those changes today in the specifics and what's new in that guide. If you did not get that email from me, please let me know. I can add you to my ATAC mailing list if for any reason you didn't get that one. We're also going to go through a little bit more information about retrocommissioning. We talked about this in the spring and just want to reiterate the retrocommissioning process and what we ask you to follow for those projects. I'm going to introduce the ATAC web portal. So something I previewed back in the spring and I'm going to go through a demo of it. It is live for ATACs to use now. We're going to implement some way to track tasks. And so we'll go into detail on like kind of task tracking. And then I have information on the year-end deadlines and processes. Excuse me. And then I want to talk about an ATAC survey that we'll be sending out later this year. Right. Wow. Okay. I'm ready to go. Please keep your microphone muted during this presentation. You are welcome to ask questions. We have time at the end for Q&A, and then also please put anything in the chat if you have questions during the presentation at any time. A couple of administrative tasks. ATAC compliance, please make sure you maintain compliance with the program. That's outlined in the ATAC guide. But the main one is just being responsive to us if we're looking for something from you. And then maintaining an active certificate of insurance with the program. You all did a fantastic job with that this year in getting me updated COIs when asked for. And so I keep those, the program keeps those on file to make sure that we are in compliance. So if you know those are expiring, please send an update, or I will see that they've expired and reach out to you for an updated copy. If you have any changes to point of contact, please let me know. I can get new people added to the ATAC mailing list, and I can get them added to our system as contacts for your ATAC. If people leave, please let me know as well, and I will take them off of the mailing list for ATAC news. And if there's anybody else you'd like to be on there, you can send them to me. And if you want information about the Trade Ally work from our Trade Ally coordinator, I can get you connected to them, and they can add you to any news or mailers from that part of the program. And then we are always looking to expand the ATAC network, especially in some of the more remote regions of the state. If you happen to know of other firms that do similar work and you think they'd be a good fit for the ATAC program, you are welcome to send them to me. We can set up calls, have discussions, just introduce them to the work that we're doing here. So you're welcome to reach out with those. And then going to jump into the first big piece of content for this morning, and that's updates to the ATAC guide and the templates. This is you've probably seen this before. This is a list of all the ATAC materials on the website. The website is linked at the bottom of this presentation, or it can be found by searching ATAC materials into the search bar on the Energy Trust website. Either a direct link or the search is the only way to get to that ATAC page at the moment. We keep all of the documents, templates, and spreadsheets all on that website. This is a list of the main documents that are there. The ATAC program guide has just been updated. Ron will be talking about that in a moment here. That's been published already. We're also updating all of the templates, going through those updates right now. If you have any feedback for those templates, please feel free to reach out. We can get on the phone, we can schedule a call, you can send me an email. We're always looking to improve those. If there's fields that need to be added, we can get those added. If there's sections that seem confusing or you find yourself copying and pasting something else into those sections or rewriting them or reformatting them in a different way every single time you fill them out, please let me know. That's valuable feedback, and we can make sure that those templates fit your needs and our needs when being used. So going through updates on all of the study templates and the proposal template to get those done, a few of those done by the end of the year and the others at the beginning of next year. And so all of the updates we're making right now are just general improvements to the forms. And in these, after the new year, any of the changes to blended rates, values, and such will be a second update to those forms. So it's just the all the rates that will be updated at that time. So you'll have the improvements in hand before those rate updates. And then I'm going to hand it over to Ron to talk about the new program guide.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Alex. For anybody that doesn't know me, Ron Ramey, the engineering lead for the custom program. Excited to roll out these program, the program guide updates for ATACs. I know we've gotten a lot of great feedback from you about things that could be better, more transparent. And essentially the updates are in that vein. So we're trying to make sure that you know exactly what we're looking for. You know, we're writing down the things that historically may have been, unwritten or implied. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page and trying to make this whole program run as efficiently as possible. So as Alex has here on the slides, there's about 15 pages of new or updated content. We'll touch on most of it. We'll gloss over some of the stuff that's kind of minor updates. There's a fair number of minor updates involved, and then there's a couple new sections. So we've updated some clarity on task study and site caps. There's a new provisional ATAC process and pathway that we've been working on and have rolled out. There's an ATAC performance component. It's not as scary as it sounds. We'll talk about all of that and the intent behind that. There's some clarity on eligible costs for EEMs. We've expanded the RCX section, clarified a few things, and then provided some trending guidance. We've gotten a lot of feedback, or it wasn't clear what we were looking for in some cases, so tried to provide some more structure around that. A little bit of adjustment to the task requirements, although it's more just clarifying and making sure that the guide reflects what we've been looking at through reviews. And then there's two new sections, completely new sections. Calculation guidance, there's a whole new chunk that touches on sort of default values, equations to use. I'll go through that pretty in depth, just to show what that looks like and to explain some how we intend that to work. And then there's the task review checklist, which hopefully is kind of the highlight of all that. It's what we're looking at on the review side. So exactly, the things that we're looking at, the things that we'll be evaluating. So that makes it, instead of you having to guess at what the things that are important to us in the review process are, we've outlined those pretty clearly, and those mirror a checklist that we've updated and are using internally. So this link's going to show up a bunch of places, but the ATAC material page, there's a link to it there. I know it's on the previous slide, but in case you're skimming through and land on this page, it's right there. So if you could go to the next slide, I have a couple of the more minor updates where it's just language or clarification, so we can touch on those. So the task study and site caps, I think most of the ATACs are aware of the $20,000 per task cap. There's also a $20,000 per site per year cap. So if you want to do 2 tasks at the same site, you'd have to do them in different calendar years. So that's, just a slight clarification there, but just so that we're all on the same page and aware. Provisional ATACs, there's a section, as I mentioned, it's a new pathway where essentially they have the qualifications, references, insurance, and all of the other programmatic requirements, but don't have sample work to share with us. So in those cases, in the engineering side and all of TRC will be working with them to ensure that they're capable of conducting these studies, and will provide support to make sure that they have what they need to ultimately get to be a full ATAC. So the intent is, basically shadow or assist them along, make sure that they understand all the programmatic rules and all of that. And then, hopefully after a couple studies, they're comfortable, confident, and understand what we need, and we can take the provisional tag off, and then they're just part of the normal ATAC pool. ATAC performance. There's a section later in the presentation where we'll touch on that a bit more, but essentially the intent there is to do a better job instead of it being subjective, try and do an objective evaluation of individual tasks and ATACs, so that if there's something that's missing or something that we're seeing is coming up on tasks, we can engage, talk to you about it, and it saves everybody time by catching those things early instead of having 4 or 5 tasks come through and we all have the same comments. Trying to get out in front of those and make sure everything is running as efficiently as possible. There's a little bit more clarification on eligible costs. I think some of that's been communicated in various pieces and parts, but tried to expand upon that to make sure everybody knows, what we can and can't include. So again, more minor updates here, but still, I think, useful and helps with aligning and making sure everybody's on the same page. So if you can go to the last of mine, these I'll touch on all of these. I'm going to show you the guide and touch on these sections here, but retro commissioning, We've outlined qualifications. We've outlined how it differs between custom and RCX. I won't go into the details there, but I'll show you some of that language. Trending guidance. We've come up with a list of recommended trend points. Not required, but recommended. Things we'd like to see and sort of durations. Those sorts of parameters. Task requirements. Again, not a lot of change here, a lot of clarifications and kind of writing down things that we've been putting into practice. And then the last two sections is where I'll spend the bulk of the time. Calculation guidelines and the review checklist. Again, I think that'll make a lot of sense once we get there. So I'll just
Mark, get paid same amount of.
I'll just jump over there right now. So I'll start with section 8. So the retro commissioning. Again, I'm not going to read through all of it, but I'll touch on some of the highlights. So we outline how the retro commissioning pathway differs from the traditional technical analysis study. Measure life's different. RCX work needs to be completed within 160 days. So that's a customer piece, but that's something important to communicate. There may or may not be RCX specific rates at this time. There aren't, but I know last year there were. I don't think there's any intent of changing that, but programs evolve and change over time. So there could be different requirements there. We have a separate ATAC. We have a separate pool of RCX ATACs. So you need to be in that pool to perform the studies. And then there's a list here of people that typically we feel confident will be able to perform these studies successfully. So looking at probably firming up these guidelines as well, but will probably look very similar to a lot of the certifications and qualifications here. Trending guidelines or guidance. We'd like to see trending for it as much as possible. Obviously, data is always helpful. The more data we can get, the more clarity we have, the less assumptions, the more confidence. So we're looking for 15-minute data, at least a couple of weeks showing a good weather spread. The other piece of this is sort of obvious, but if you're looking at a hot water reset for a comfort heating application, trend data from July doesn't really tell us a whole lot. So if we can get seasonal data, that would be ideal. And then we just have a list of common points we'd like to see trended. Not all of these apply to every measure, so it's not like you need to do all of these for everything. If you're doing duct static pressure reset, temperatures aren't super relevant, right? We're going to want to see VFD speeds and pressures and flows and stuff like that. So again, these are just sort of typical points that we'd like trended. We have some similar guidance for cooling and heating, but again, as applicable to the project and the measures you're looking at. I'm going to skim over the PPC. That's essentially unchanged. Nothing to report there. There's some communication stuff and contacts. Again, the task requirements has a little bit of updates, but really just clarifying, provide us supporting info. I guess this section boils down to the more complete the info you can provide us, the easier it makes everything. So, if there's new equipment, provide spec sheets. If you can get trend data, that's great. If you can't get trend data, can you get sequences? Can you get screenshots? If anything can be metered, like if there's major loads that are metered, that always helps. It just eliminates assumptions. So this whole section's really touching on that. So since we're not out at the facility, you're the ones that are taking a look at the equipment, and we're getting that vicariously through the reports and calcs. The more you can do to walk us through the whole process and everything that you saw and clarify operations, just makes everything so much easier. So that's most of what Section 11 is. There's additional guidelines on baselines and definitions. All that is still the same. There's no updates there. There's special circumstances. Same there. No real updates there. COVID guidance, we updated a little bit, basically with the presumption that the last couple of years represent, what future operation will look like. I know that for several years there, we had impacts from equipment and being operated differently and occupancies and all of that being different. But at this point, our default assumption is that, 2022, 2023 is all what the what the future operation will look like. So we can take those on a case-by-case basis, but that's the default. So I'll just skip down to Section 12, which is really where the bulk of the new content comes. What we've done, and I guess we've heard from the ATACs, is, and what we've seen is, everybody uses a slightly different factor. Everybody, gets things from different sources. So we tried to standardize on, if you don't have information, start with these defaults. If you have better information or site-specific information, please continue to use that. So this first section, again, is largely unchanged for model calibration, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. There's a new section that talks about sampling. So if you're looking at a bunch of identical pieces of equipment and you're trending, this is how we'd like you to sample. So, take the number of like pieces of equipment, plug it into this equation, and get out the number of pieces of equipment we'd like to see data for. There's a expanded section for energy model files. So depending on, if you're using a modeling platform, these are the files that we're looking to see for our review. And then there's a note that says if the files are too large, some sort of document sharing, either yours or ours, we can get that set up. So trending guidance just refers back to the RCX section. So wanted to cover it here, but didn't want to just copy and paste from the previous sections. And then we get into really all of the sort of default values. So, we have information on VFD efficiency and, assumed minimum turn down. Again, if you have different information from the manufacturer, or if you have curves and performance that differs from this, please use that, but also provide it. So these are really intended to be, there's no clear documentation on what the minimum is for this drive or what the efficiency is. If you use these values, it'll eliminate us having questions. Same thing, fan curves. You're welcome to use actual fan curves, but some default fan curves from ASHRAE in case we need to take a look at flow versus power or anything like that. We have some brake horsepower calcs. Again, if you have it, just document it and send it to us. But these are some other ways that won't flag anything on the review side as they come through. So just different conversions, motor load factors. I know affinity laws are always, everybody approaches those a little bit differently, but pulling data from PNNL for those power factors. So looking at 2.5 instead of 3 for speed versus power, and 1.3 for pressure versus power. Same thing, power factors, some default motor efficiency tables. So again, if you don't have nameplates, it's a 10 horsepower motor and it's 1800 RPMs, use 89.5. And then the last section of this is some common measures. So looking at, the most common items we see through the custom program. most of you are familiar with these, so again, I won't read through them, but this is a lot of what we're seeing through custom, between controls and drives and those sorts of things on systems. So you're welcome to use this language if it helps in either your reports or with conversations with customers, but just here as a reference. And then the last item, which you'll get to see a little bit later, is we boiled the task review checklist down into basically a bulleted list. So this is what we are using for reviews, and we've rephrased them to be statements instead of questions, but essentially that's the only change here. So we're looking for correct templates, we're looking for correct utility data, we're looking for matching values, for correct nomenclature, energy model calibration. Is the calibration table there? If you did a whole building model, does it meet the program requirements that are outlined in this document? If you're using a modified baseline, did you calibrate to existing usage first? If you're using CBEX, which doesn't happen a whole lot, for energy breakdowns, are you using the right building type? Do we have all the relevant info on equipment? Again, I'll just touch on kind of the high-level concepts. You're welcome to dig in and read in more detail. Same thing with schedules. If something's atypical, like we see a school running 24/7, we're going to want to document that a lot more closely than, make sure that we have appropriate support for that, where if you say school's running from 8 to 4, that makes perfect sense. That's sort of what we would expect. So a little less critical there. And then some guidance on when to use a code baseline, making sure that we have EEM tables that are clear, that we're documenting non-energy benefits appropriately, that there's correct supporting info, maintenance savings. Again, there's a difference between the way ODO and ETO approach weighted useful life. So ETO looks at savings, ODO looks at costs, and then we just want to make sure that there's a clear plan to stage measures where there's dependencies or interactive effects. There's additional guidance elsewhere in the document for that. And then we suggest rolling baselines, but that depends on a number of factors like confidence in the customer selecting multiple or all of the EMs versus them being uncertain. And then there's just some info on calcs. The big piece here is hard-coded values or calcs that aren't unlocked are a problem. So we want to make sure that we can get and see behind the scenes. We can check under the hood of any calcs and follow what's going on. So that's those are the updates in a nutshell. I could go on for longer, but I think that's probably a good level of detail, and I'm happy to field any quick questions if anybody has them. I'm sure there'll be more as everybody digests this, but hopefully this is all helpful and helps make the review and task development process easier, knowing exactly what we're looking for, and should save time on both our side and yours. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ron. I'm going to switch back to sharing over here. All right. If I could get some kind of note that that's visible, that'd be great. I see a thumbs up. Awesome. Moving forward here. Next, going to go into a little bit more detail about the retro commissioning projects and process. Jeff.
Thank you, Alex. And again, thank you, Ron. I think those updates to the ATAC guide should better align the expectations we have with what the ATACs are doing and make the process a lot smoother for everybody. So I'm Jeff Kropp. I'm the engineering manager, although I've moved into another role as the senior program manager, where I'm helping to guide the overall program. I can announce that yesterday we finalized our negotiations with my replacement. So we have a new engineering manager who will be starting on January 6th. So a couple months out. But we finalized an offer to him. He accepted that. So we're really excited to have him on board. So that's news to a lot of the people in the program, since that just happened yesterday and we haven't made the announcement more widely. But when we have our next ATAC presentation in early 2025 to update you on what's new and changing in the program, then you will see a new face. So I'll still be around, but he will be taking over that process. And as part of this, I also do want to emphasize, as we're talking about retro commissioning now, there are a lot of things that have been set up with this program design and with the custom offering itself that may not be working for you. And we really want to hear that from you. If you have any suggestions, any pain points, anything like that, please communicate that to Alex, because we do want to learn from you. We want to figure out how to make this project more effective. I think it has been working. I will note that in 2024, to date, we have processed nearly double the number of technical analysis studies that we did in 2023. So it is basically the high watermark for custom studies that we have seen throughout the program. It's a huge amount of work, by far more budget than I expected. So that required a little bit of creative juggling on my part. But we have been able to fully fund all the test studies, and we will continue to do so through the end of the year. But we have seen a tremendous response from this group, from the ATACs, and look to continue that going forward. So, thanks, Kirk, but that was back in April, so I've been doing double duty since then. In terms of retro commissioning, so again, getting into the element of program design, this program was really designed for what I refer to as widgets. We're looking at equipment, maybe you're replacing a chiller, a boiler, control system upgrade, things like that. It was really not designed to look at operations and maintenance improvements. And our previous implementer, ICF, managed to get this into the program in 2017, and we are still trying to refine that. So right now, the retro commissioning process goes through the typical custom process. An ATAC will identify a project, or an energy advisor will identify a project and bring that to an ATAC. And then the ATAC has to go out on site. Well, not go on site. You have to sit in your office and try and figure out what the energy savings are going to be, how much it's going to cost, what your test fee is going to be to investigate this. And often this is without you going on site, without seeing the equipment, seeing the facility, looking at the building management system, looking at the trends, seeing what is actually going on there. So it's really like taking a crystal ball and trying to project what might be happening there, which is tough. And then you have to submit a proposal for us to approve. Again, there's a lot of unknowns there. And the big issue is that the proposed task fee should not exceed the incentive value. So we have that task fee up to $20,000, but we also have a limit that the task fee cannot be more than the incentives that we're going to be paying out. This was more of an issue in previous years. Now in 2024, we have nearly doubled the incentives from 22 cents per kilowatt hour to 45 cents per kilowatt hour, and from $3 per therm to $5 per therm. That has really made this task fee issue much less of a concern in 2024. But regardless, there are a lot of unknowns here. It has been difficult to get a lot of retro commissioning projects through, and I have not seen a lot of ATACs taking advantage of retro commissioning. A few here and there, but not at the volume we would really expect to see. From my standpoint, there is a limit to what we can do on widgets because of codes and standards and costs and control system availability. But there's a lot that we could be doing to upgrade the built environment. We have so many buildings that are out there with BMS systems already that need help. They need care. The systems are not operating effectively. There's a lot of energy savings we could achieve by just helping people make their systems work more effectively. And we would really like to encourage that. So in the spring, we did set up a new process earlier this year. We presented that. We haven't seen a lot of uptake on that. So that's why we wanted to repeat this, reiterate this. I do know from previous trainings that it sometimes takes 10 times for someone to hear something before it really sinks in and they get it. So we will keep repeating this until we see some more uptake. So go ahead, Alex. Let's see the next slide. So this is our optional approach. You could go through the regular retro commissioning approach where you go through the proposal process, everything like this. We are trying to simplify this and make it easier for ATACs to bring retro commissioning projects to us. So in this case, if you have someone who is interested in retro commissioning or an energy advisor is interested in retro commissioning, then we will actually look at the EUI and just make some rough calculations. So we'll look at a benchmark for the site EUI against a couple of standard benchmarks like the Commercial Building Stock Assessment, which is a regional study, or the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey, which is a federal study. And they have different EUI benchmarks for different types of buildings. So we will look at the actual site EUI to see how that compares against the benchmark, and then try to estimate how much EUI reduction we would see and the associated savings with that. So there's a lot more to that. This is just a simplified approach because we don't have much time today. If you're interested, I can dive into the details with any of you. Just reach out. But basically, we want to look at the EUI and we want to base the savings on the EUI and what we think is achievable, usually 5 or 10%. And then we will estimate the task fee based on the incentives for those savings. So really, this is us saying, hey, this is what the task fee could be up to a max of $20,000. This really takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for you because we have, usually with a lot of these buildings, there's a lot going wrong. And if you have a high EUI relative to the benchmark, you're probably going to see some savings. So we don't think there's a lot of risk there. We have convinced Energy Trust there's less risk, and they have approved us to move forward with this. And we'll just see how it goes as we go through it. So we'll do this utility data analysis and then send that over to the ATAC to review. We'll say, this is our guesswork. This is what we have put together. We think you can save this much. We think that the incentives could be around this amount. Here is the task fee we propose to you. Here are the details on the site. The ATAC can look at this and say, yeah, that seems reasonable. Or they can say, well, I think there is more or less opportunity here. You can negotiate a bit with us. We want to try and work this out so that you feel that the scope we have proposed is achievable and reasonable for you. So again, we're just trying to take the guesswork out of this for you, reduce your proposal time up front, and streamline this process so that we can get more retro commissioning projects done. So once you agree, we'll send you a work order for the task fee that we negotiate and agree on for the retro commissioning project. We do ask that you follow the retro commissioning guidelines that we've outlined in the ATAC guide. A lot of that is trying to make sure that you are doing trending during a season or have trend data at least. If someone's already set up the trend data and you've got trend data for a year, that's great. You can just move forward. In many cases, people have not set up the trend data, so you have to set up the trends. We want to see at least 2 weeks, preferably more, during periods when there is heating and cooling. We really want to see how those systems are responding, preferably over a wide range of temperatures so we can get the most accurate data. And really, we're just trying to make sure that the customers are best served by this process. If you come in and you've got 2 weeks of trend data from the summer, that's great. We happen to be a heating dominant climate, so we're really not going to know what is being improved for the winter time and what can happen on the heating side and how accurate those savings are. So really, we want to see heating, we want to see cooling, we want to see a bit of both so that we can just really serve the client best, serve Energy Trust best, and get a little more accuracy around what these savings could be. So really, that's it in a nutshell. It's pretty easy. We are just trying to take this process where we take the guesswork out of it for you. We streamline the proposal process for you. We try and get a lot more retro commissioning done, hopefully direct more business your way with that and help out. So I'm glad to take any questions on that. I'm glad to discuss that with you privately. If there are alternatives to this that you would like to discuss, different ways to approach it, let us know. Glad to discuss that. Glad to find better ways to do business with you. And with that, I will give a short pause for questions. We don't typically get a lot of questions on these forums, but I will shut up for a moment and then turn it over to Alex. Okay, Alex, take it away. I'm available to answer any questions.
Awesome.
Privately.
I do have a question about this, actually, that might be helpful. For ATACs who are also implementers, how or will this process speed up the timeline from that initial project inception to actually implementing the measures.
So are you talking about someone who is a controls contractor as well as being an ATAC?
Yep.
Yeah. Again, this should help them move through the process very quickly because you're not having to go through the proposal process. It's not from their standpoint, it's not a huge time saver, but it is a little bit in terms of streamlining the process of just getting in the door, getting alignment with us on what needs to happen and how to move forward. So instead of spending time looking at a crystal ball, trying to figure out what the savings could be, what the measure costs could be, things like that, we can say, here's a pot of money to actually go in and study this and give us those numbers. So it depends on how long the ATAC usually takes and the amount of time and effort they usually put into their proposal process. But it should hopefully streamline that process for them.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, I'm going to see. Next slide here. The ATAC web portal. So this is something I announced earlier this year that it was coming. It is finished. So the web portal is a online platform for ATACs to log into and view their TASs and view TAS information. It is going to be a read-only spot, so there's no uploading or downloading of documents. This is for your purposes and your benefit to see TASs that have been assigned to you as an ATAC. To get into this, there is a registration process, and we're only letting individuals who have a valid UCI agreement on file to register for this. There is also a validation step, so I will have to send you. It's not like it's not a two-factor code, but it's just an ATAC ID, so you're able to register. I have the instructions and the walkthrough on registration that I will send out after this meeting. And I am going to go through a demo of it here. But the whole purpose of this is to just make it quicker so ATACs can ask like, hey, where's this task in the process? Or reference old ones and task fees and timelines and dates associated with different tasks. This is a tool for you to keep track of the work that you're doing, the work you've been assigned, and is going to reduce a few of those questions that we get on what's the status of this and is it being reviewed? I thought we submitted this invoice. This is for your benefit. And then there's already some improvements in progress, and I will touch on those when I pull it up here in a moment for the demo. So I'm gonna have to stop sharing, move my screen, and reshare. Let me log in. Right. No, there's an issue logging in. Let me refresh the tab. 1 second. The session expired before we got to this point. Okay, awesome. Good news. I'm logged in. Can I get a confirmation that this is shown? Awesome. Thank you. So this is what you see when you log in. It's a very, very simple tool at the moment. There's two sections. There's either a dashboard to view your tasks, or there is a quick profile view to see information about the ATAC. So I created a sample profile for myself, Alex ATAC, with contact information. This is for your benefit to verify. If you see something incorrect in here, please let me know and I will get it updated on our end. But otherwise, this is just a read-only spot for ATAC account information. I can expand this too to include more about the company. If that's something you'd like to see, please give me that feedback, and we can see about adding more information about the whole ATAC rather than the individual to this part. And then the other part, go back home, is the tasks dashboard. So this is currently undergoing improvements, and I'll touch on those as relevant. But what you'll see here are a list of your task projects. I created 3 sample projects just for the purpose of sharing this. The project ID number, so that CU number, will be in this field here. The task fee, once a work order has been issued, this task fee field will be filled out with the task fee, as well as the date that work order was issued. And then the study submission due date, this is the one that you give us. So when you submit a proposal that say the study's going to take 8 weeks, we will put that in there. Or if you give us an actual date you have this completed by, we will put that date in here. Last update, this column's going away. It's not as useful as originally intended. So in the next update, that won't be there. There are also going to be 3 tabs up here instead of all studies on one tab. Those 3 tabs will be, it'll be tasks that are complete, tasks that are in progress, and tasks that are not yet submitted. So those 3 categories will be here and divide all of your proposals or all your tasks into different sections. And so to see more information on these, there's a button over here that allows you to open an expanded view of the task. So you can click that and it will give you, again, a read-only view of the task information. So some general info, the title, the project number, and then the reviewer. I think I've also added a field to this section that'll be in the update, hopefully by the end of the year. And then the next section on fees. So this will be when we receive that invoice, what the task fee was, along with the projected savings will be in here. So these are the savings that were estimated on the proposal. The final savings from the final version will not be updated in this view, unfortunately. And then if there's an addendum, that will also pop up in here, so you can view addendums for your own tracking purposes. The next section contains the key project dates. Last update is going to be removed from here, and I think I've added a few more dates, a few more useful dates to this section also. But this shows all just pretty critical project dates. So when the work orders issue, once we've received it, so the study submission date, this is when we received the study, and when that review is assigned, when the review is completed, the study submission due date, the same one from the other tab. Some of these headers or titles for fields will be changing to be a little bit more clear and differentiate them from each other, as well as some of the like info that's listed on the site. So all those improvements are in progress on here. And then the last section, there's also, oh yeah, up here there's also going to be a status. So it'll give you a project status that should be helpful as well to kind of identify where this task is at. And then down here, if you have projects that went on hold or were abandoned for any reason, you'll be able to see that in here. And you can always, if there's something that needs to come back from on hold or is going to be revived from abandon, you have this info available to you, so you can log into the portal and see all the projects and where they are. Excited to share the update when it comes about, but it will be similar to this, just with a lot of usability improvements and some clarity improvements to some of the field titles, section titles, supporting information, just to remove any confusion. And I reviewed this with a few of you after we launched it, so thank you very much for that feedback. Excited to see it in practice, implemented. And then down here, there's a button that can take you back to the dashboard. And that's the ATAC portal. It's a pretty simple tool, but hopefully you will find it useful to view those things. And it can save us all time for simple questions on when you may have them for us. And I know that popped back up, but want to share it from PowerPoint. So, all right, should be back online there. Ron, another thumbs up for me. It's good to go. Sweet. Thanks. So that's the portal. Please let me know if you have any additional feedback on this. Once I send out the instructions, you're welcome to register. If there's someone from your company that would like to register and they're hit with an error, it's probably because we don't have that UCI agreement on file. So we can double check all of those, and please be a little patient if you do get some sort of error signing up. But fingers crossed, I think we worked out most of the bugs. But of course, once it goes live to a larger pool, we will inevitably find more. So we're ready to address those and fix them. The next thing we want to talk about is that performance tracking. This is not, like Ron said earlier, it's not as scary as it sounds. This is a tool for all of us to improve feedback loops and really make the task process go quicker and identify trends faster from task to task. And I'll hand it over to Ron here to go into a little bit more detail about this and tie it back to the program guide earlier.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, like Alex said, really, um, yeah, I know performance tracking always has a negative connotation, so hopefully we're able to dispel that with this. But really, the intent is to come up with an objective scoring system that points back to Section 13 of the ATAC guidelines, so that reviewer checklist. So now that we're on the same page as to what we're looking for, the intent is now we can have mutual criteria that we can take a look at, make sure that things are on track, or be able to catch things early on that may need some refinement, so that, like I said earlier, we don't go 3, 4, 5 studies before with the same item before wasting your time revising those. We can engage earlier and have a quick discussion and say, hey, this was missing, or this was deficient, and I'll show you what that tentatively looks like. It's still something we've used it on a handful of projects, and it seems to be working well. We're rolling it out to the whole team, or we've rolled it out to the whole team. We'll see, like Alex said, now that there's more people involved, we'll see if it continues to go as expected, or if we need to adjust. But I'll show you what it looks like now, and kind of the intent behind it. So yeah, the intent is really to quickly and consistently identify patterns, especially with all of the reviewers involved, trying to make something that's clear, consistent, and that we can use the data. If I'll talk about the scoring system we came up with a little bit as well. But yeah, so the intent is continuous feedback, continuous improvement. Obviously, if you're doing everything you need to, there's no need for improvement. But if we're noticing something looks off, or something's missing, something's not covered, we can get out in front of that. So we're testing that internally to see how it goes through the end of the year, and then the intent would be to start that with the new year, after you guys have a couple months of familiarity with the format. We've worked out any sort of issues or adjustments that we may need to make on our side, and then the scoring is really based on each item on the review checklist. I will show you what that looks like on our side, but basically we're sorting it into 3 categories based on either report content, report format, or the calculation model side. So we'll have the ability to look at each of those pieces independently. We've assigned each of the bulleted items into one of those categories, and then we can take a look at those. We'll include specific feedback or comments as needed, and then we're looking at a 3-point system. Basically, you get 2 points, so full points if there's no issues with that item. If you've done what we've asked you to, everything's there and complete. If it's partially complete, or there's some sort of minor issue, and I'll show you some of the examples I have in the checklist for that. You get 1 point, and then if it's missing or barely there, you'll get 0 points. So I originally intended a much larger scale, 1 to 10, and realized quickly that trying to standardize exactly what a 6 is versus a 7 across 15 to 20 different reviewers was not going to provide a whole lot of useful data, because everybody's going to interpret things a little bit differently. So we condensed the scale down, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen, let you guys see what that looks like. So this is the checklist. Again, everything in here is phrased as a question, but it's all the same stuff that was at the end of the ATAC guidelines. So that's section 13. There's a scoring criteria box, this color key. You won't see these items because these are more internal notes, but yeah, basically item missing or significantly, deficient. 2, obviously, if it's complete or nearly complete, we offer some, flexibility there. Like if there's a typo or you put the wrong cell reference in a calc that's otherwise fine, these are fairly rigid, but it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, you spelled the word wrong, so you get a 1. But yeah, so the middle is, there's some sort of, you've taken the wrong approach to a calculation. You've done something that, you've not calibrated your model within the guidelines outlined. You haven't provided clarification why. So something along those lines. And, we'll work to develop more of these examples over time, but these are just the ones that have come up both in normal task reviews and also with this scoring. So again, this is just that checklist, and then down at the bottom here, there's scoring. So if you get a 2, you get a green. We've made this visual so that if somebody goes into this and you can clearly see if something's missing or if everything's good. Not sure if we're going to share this out directly or just be just sort of the conclusions. So there's a note section that would be the comments that we would likely share with you. So still some of the details to sort out, but that's the intent here, is really to see how things are going and be able to have discussions earlier in the process to prevent these things from taking a bunch of time for everybody. Because right now we don't have, it's up to myself or the reviewers to flag issues and then to notice the pattern. And this makes it a lot easier to do that. And hopefully we'll save time and effort and make this a whole lot easier, along with just the checklist itself being a lot clearer as to what we're looking for. So excited to have this as part of the mix as well. I think it'll help towards all of our end goals of making these studies get approved as quickly as we can. So I will turn it back over to Alex unless there are questions.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. And also just want to note that this is a tool for us as well, because if we start to see a trend and like 5 different ATACs on 10 different studies all miss something or all are marked in a certain table or a certain part of the report, maybe that means we need to update the template or do something else on our end to address that. So hopefully it just adds to the program and really helps us make things go smoother, because ultimately I think the goal is to get these studies finished, reviewed, and approved in as few meaningful engineering hours as possible on both sides, especially during that review process. And so we're always looking for ways to make sure reviews don't drag on, and that's in both the time spent looking at the studies themselves and just communication back and forth, emails during the review process or meetings during the review process, and make things go smoother. Year-end deadlines. So for the end of the year here, because it gets very busy and we work on a calendar year, we do have some deadlines and requirements and slight process changes. I will send out an email afterwards that contains all of this information, but gonna go over it pretty briefly here. So beginning in mid-November, we're going to implement these changes until kind of around mid-January. First, a couple definitions. So when I say project setup, this project setup is the process that we go through once we receive a signed Form 100E, that's the enrollment form, the utility bills that are needed to validate and approve the 100E, and then the task proposal. So that is the proposal from you to do the study. So anytime I talk about project setup, all of those things and the project setup documents, that's what we're referring to. And then work orders, these are issued once a project is set up and a task proposal is approved. Both of those steps are needed to issue a work order for work. So for studies with an existing work order, the only change for year end is when the invoice must be submitted by. I guess the only news, this really isn't a change. So if you're looking to have payment for a 2024 project, then the task must be approved and the invoice submitted by December 31st to be paid as 2024. That payment will be processed and paid about 4 to 6 weeks after the invoice is received. And then anytime we receive an invoice after December 31st, that will be a 2025 project. That payment processing won't resume until like end of January, early February. So expect payment for those probably about 4 weeks after those are submitted. So if you're looking to wrap up a project in 2024, please get us those invoices by December 31st. Send them to EB Custom, copy your energy advisors as well, and just make sure we have that received. And then also noting here, we don't accept partial invoices. Please make sure you're invoicing the full amount for the task after it's completed. For tasks that do not yet have a work order. So if the ATAC is expecting to begin work before February 2025, then we want those setup docs in hand on our side before December 20th. So those project setup timelines will take a little bit longer through the end of the year to get everything verified with the 100E and set up so we can issue a work order. So please keep in mind now that if you're looking to get started on work on a project before February, we need those before December 20th. The earlier the better, always, for these, but that is going to be the last deadline. We won't be setting up any new projects from December 21st to January 15th. That's so we can prioritize all those that were submitted and make sure that they get rolling quickly for tasks that require work to begin soon. If you don't think you're going to begin the study work before February, hold on to those a little bit longer before submission, because we want to prioritize those where the intent is to get started. The ATAC has work, you have a scope of work, you have a participant that's ready to go and ready to get started on that project. So if yours timeline is a little bit more relaxed, hold those documents until after December 21st. Note in your submission emails what your expectations are for timelines and such. And this only affects new projects with new 100Es. So if you already have an existing project where you've submitted that 100E and utility bill, but no task proposal yet, maybe you're waiting on information from a contractor or working with the participant to really nail down a scope of work, that's fine. As long as that project's set up, we can review task proposals, issue work orders on a normal basis, on a normal timeline. It's really that initiation of a new site with a new 100E and getting a new custom number set up that's going to be impacted at year end. And again, I will detail all of this in an email, but want to make sure you have plenty of heads up so we can get those in and prioritize those. And I think talking about this now in October should hopefully mean that any of these timelines are going to be reduced from what you see on here, because we can get everything going soon and have that all moving smoothly. So please let me know if you have any questions about this. I'll send out that email and you will get all of these details expanded from this version that fits on the slide here. So I will have that out to you soon. And the last piece I want to talk about is a ATAC profile survey. So I'm going to be sending out a survey for all the ATACs, and I'll ask you to complete it by the end of the year, please. This is so we can build a better just profile on our end, statistics, just information about the ATACs, not your stats and specs, but more about your company. So this really helps us when participants approach us in energy advisors and outreach staff approach us to say, I have this participant that's looking for an ATAC, who's available to work with them? Well, ATACs sometimes work with different market sectors, do different project types. They have different regional coverage, location, willingness to travel and take on projects. Maybe there's a premium if you have to travel, so something far out might not be a great fit for that particular ATAC. We have a pretty dated legacy version of what this seeks to accomplish, and I really want to get that updated for our team. And this isn't going to be something that's publicly available. It will be for internal use for our purposes, to make sure that everything's moving smoothly and we're working with the best ATAC for the purpose, and so that we can recommend the correct set of multiple ATACs to a participant looking for someone to work with. And some of those other things, participants may approach us and say, the ATAC I work with, I want them to be able to do the implementation work also. They might be looking for a firm that does that. So if we have those short lists or long lists, however it might be, to share with different participants with different needs, this will be really helpful for that purpose. So I'll put together that survey for you. I will send it out. I'd like to get those received by the end of the year. I'll send out some reminders with that. But this will be sent out soon, for you to fill out. So I really appreciate you helping us out with that. I think this will be really beneficial. And then that wraps up everything we have to share, and we will leave time for feedback, for questions if you'd like to share. And you're always welcome to reach out to any of us later on too. And I'll get this recording uploaded for all of you that aren't here. You can't hear me say that, but you will at the end of the recording. So I appreciate all your time this morning. I will open it up for any questions.
Okay. If there are no questions now, again, always feel free to reach out to Alex. Feel free to reach out to me. We're glad to discuss anything with you one-on-one or update things. Alex will be sending out a few more emails with lots of details. And yeah, definitely it has been a great year for the custom offering. We've seen a lot of great work by all of you, a lot of projects coming through, a lot of very exciting projects. And we're picking up a lot of momentum going into the future, into 2025 and 2026. So I personally want to thank all of you and want to thank Alex for all the great work that he's done in this regard, and Ron as well.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. We appreciate everyone and all the work you're doing. And please continue to reach out in ways that we can keep improving and keep making this better. I'm here for that purpose. So here to help support and do the work on our end to help you do the work that you're doing.
Thanks,
Great.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And the recording.